to the sidelines. Has a man wide open. It's tipped. It's picked off. MJ Devonshire. Got face. He's going to take it to the end zone. Pittsburgh takes the lead.
He loves those moments. It reminds me of last year in the Garden against St. John's. And guys just stepped up. Blake hits a what the hell three. You know, we're like, what are you doing? And he's done that all year.
Klicka out to Vazario. It's over. The Pitt Panthers have upset Wisconsin. Anybody if he hits his field goal. Up and got it. Sauls does it again.
It's been a minute since we had a volleyball episode, but sort of, I called this the mid-season episode in my notes, but we're a little bit past that point. We're getting into the end of the season, and while we've had many guests on this show to talk about volleyball, we're getting a new angle. This time around, we're having on James Santelli. Pitt Twitter, you might know him. You might know him from being on the internet. He also has a Substack about Pitt volleyball, which he's here to talk about tonight on Simplify Podcast. Welcome back, by the way. James, how we doing?
Doing well, Zach. Thank you for having me on for this quasi mid-season recap. I'm excited to talk.
Hell yeah, man. And I mean, just to put it out there, I know football's been good. I got high hopes for basketball. I'll reiterate, this is the best team in Oakland. It has been for the last 3 years and counting. And there's a reason that I at least take episodes to dedicate to this team because they're so dominant. And I mean, this season's dominant is different from what I would say their usual dominance was. I think that, you know, they were one of the best teams for sure, but this team is different. Now, before we go into it, real quick, I'm going to let you plug all your stuff at the beginning, so don't forget to at the end. So please let the people know what you're up to and where they can find your writing on this team.
Well, thank you very much. I have revived what I call the Bandwagoner's Guide to Pitt Volleyball. It is at jamessantelli.substack.com. That's the best place to find it. I'm on Twitter at James Santelli for the time being. Who knows what the future holds, but I'm still going to be blogging about the team on Substack for the rest of this 2024 season. So you can find my stuff there. Go ahead, plug in your email address. You'll get it every twice a week. You'll be able to get updates.
Oh, yeah, and just hand up, I'm a subscriber, so you can join me and get that good shit in your inbox. And you know, we'll all be on Twitter.
Get that good shit in your inbox.
Get that good shit in your inbox, and we'll all be on Twitter. The site sucks, but it's still the best place to talk about sports on the internet, unfortunately, until someone makes a better version. But back to talking about sports. I mentioned that this team is dominant. And I was, before they lost to SMU and before they dropped a set to BC, I was going to do an episode called Sweep Caroline. Unfortunately, I did not get it out in time to I would have jinxed it anyway. I just know that that's just what happens. But they are 22-1 on the season. Only 3 of those wins have gone into a fourth set, being at Boston College, home against Louisville in the Pete, and home against Notre Dame following the Louisville game. The one loss has been to SMU, 3 days after they played them the first time. We know this team is good, but I don't think they've been this dominant in the Dan Fisher era. And I guess my first question for you tonight is, what's fueling this, and what do you think is different about this team compared to his past teams that have been still very good but not this dominant?
There are a couple things, but I think that number one thing that we've seen is just the service game. Serving from their main 6 servers that they have rotating through. We're talking about Olivia Babcock, Valeria Vasquez Gomez, Kat Flood, Tori Stafford, Rachel Fairbanks being the main 5 that come through, and a couple others. We've had Dylan Griffin and Mallory Myers serving specialists from time to time. they have been sharper than ever, and that's really where it all begins. Um, I I like to think that Dan Fisher watched what happened in the national championship match last year when
Hmm.
Texas just served Nebraska off the court, and probably saw that and said, "Oh, we've got to step up our service game." And whether that's true or not, Pitt has certainly done so, and they are the number one team in a lot of areas, but they are certainly a number one in serving, and that kind of starts it all. So when you look at a team like Pitt that has been successful in the past, that has been a top five team in the past, that obviously has been a Final Four team for the last 3 years, the step up that we see that makes it a team that has only gone past 3 sets, that has not swept in every single match, minus a few, it really starts from the service line. And that has put the pressure on teams, that has made, even very good teams, even top 10 teams, unable to put together an offense, put together an attack that can really come after Pitt. And that's really what it comes down to. The other thing I'll say is you want to give credit to two of the players that have stepped up after last season. We know about Olivia Babcock and Tori Stafford at the Pins. They were already great as freshmen. They're even better as sophomores. But Bree Kelly coming back from injury at the middle blocker position and being joined by Ryla Jones as a freshman at middle blocker. We came into the year thinking that that was going to be, middle blocker was going to be the position that Pitt was maybe at its weakest. And that's not the case. That is one of the positions where they are strongest, is middle blocker. So that has all come together for Pitt here in 2024.
Yeah. Where do we go from here? We'll stay a middle blocker because, like you said, coming to the season, we had you could write it in Sharpie who was going to play a majority of the time at every position for this Pitt volleyball team outside of middle blocker. The combination of Rachel Jepson leaving, Bree Kelly being somewhat of an unknown coming off an injury, and then the only two players being true freshmen at that position, gave you a lot of pause and said, okay, this is something they got to figure out. It's evident that they figured it out. We'll start with Bree Kelly. Obviously, her injury shortened 2023. I think it had a huge impact on the team. Obviously, it led the way for Emma Monks to kind of become the player she was on last year's team. But you're seeing how important and how good of a player she is this year. I mean, there are several highlight blocks a match she has every single time. She is one of the hardest hitters on the team. And I think you might have put in this out, but the EPA charts that one guy posts, the @ is not on the top
That's
of my
all good.
head.
Chad Gordon.
Chad Gordon. Shout out Chad Gordon.
Yeah.
So he posted one of middle blockers in the red zone, which is, I believe, what the final 5 points of a
past 20
set.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Bree Kelly has played in 2 fifth sets all year and still made the top 30.
Yeah.
Like, I think my take right now is that she is kind of low key the team MVP of this year. How do you feel about that?
Well, I wouldn't go that far as to call her team MVP, but I would call her the biggest difference maker between the 2023 and the 2024 teams. I mean, as you pick up, Pitt has not had to play in the red zone a lot. They're dominating teams so much that their opponents don't even get to 20 points, that they're even in the red zone trying to play this, close 25 past that into extra points sort of matches. But I think what's key with Bree Kelly is that she is so strong as both a blocker, as a defensive player, and then just, picking up those swings in the middle. And for anybody that's kind of, picked up on volleyball in the last couple of years, like I've seen, that middles tend to have the highest hitting percentage because a setter will go to them when they see that the middle is open and that there's a lot of floor to work with to be able to terminate. And that connection between Bree Kelly and Rachel Fairbanks, the setter, has been working so efficiently that Bree Kelly's had one of the best hitting percentages in the country because Rachel will know at setter when there's an opening for Bree Kelly to be able to terminate, she's going to make it happen. She's just that strong and just that powerful right down the middle that it's going to get things done. And it's not just her. I mean, Ryla Jones has stepped up big time as a freshman coming into this system. As you mentioned, there was sort of a battle at the middle blocker position to be that second middle blocker. And you say second, that basically means you're getting 3 turns of the 6 rotations in the front row. So there were a couple freshmen, and Bianca Garibaldi being one of them, from Argentina, trying to get that time. But it was pretty clear, even from the matches, the scrimmages they were playing in the spring, that Ryla Jones was something special, and she's proved it so far. And with Chad Gordon's numbers, even Ryla Jones has already stepped into the top 10 among the sort of advanced metrics, middle blockers, with what she's been able to do defensively and offensively. It's been really a huge part of the puzzle for Pitt this season.
Yeah, you went right into Riley Jones. I think that was going to be my next thing I was going to lead you into. But yeah, she's been extremely impressive, extremely athletic, and then also on the same deal is just hitting the ball out of the gym. I think now that I think about it, I believe that per Chad Gordon's numbers, at least on every metric I've seen, there's been a Pitt logo in the top 10, if not the top 5 on every single one of them. I think.
Yeah, every position.
Yeah. I was like, oh, is there one? No, there's probably not. And I mean,
outside hitter, it's Tori and Valeria Vasquez Gomez. At opposite, it's Olivia Babcock. At Bree Keller, we just talked about, and Ryla Jones. At libero position passing, it's been Emmy Klicka. It's really quite staggering. It's everywhere you look.
It really is. I mean, you want to talk about Tori and Liv next. My note here just simply says wow, because I don't really know what else there is to say at this point. I can't really I'd have to make up new words basically to describe, oh yeah, everything we said about them last year about how good they are. They're just better now.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's most apparent, honestly, with Liv serve, because last year you didn't get as many runs as she did. And you mentioned earlier that the team has overall gotten better at serving, but it's very apparent with Olivia Babcock's serve because it's on more times that it's not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's one of those, the jump topspin serve that you'll see all the time in men's volleyball, but a little more rarely in women's volleyball, that it is high risk, high reward. I mean, you're really going at it, whether it's going to, go into the net, beyond the back line, or just cause problems for the passers on the other side. It is ultimately high risk, high reward. And there were times last season where it really did seem like too much risk. I can point to the Elite Eight match against Louisville where there were multiple turns that Olivia took in serving where it just wasn't working. It just wasn't hitting. And there was sort of a thought that, should you, sub in for Olivia at serving? Should she back it off a little bit? And Dan Fisher, there was a moment where you could kind of see him on TV say, no, keep going for it. Keep going for it. And I think that's kind of been the attitude this year, is there's no backing off of this serve. Keep going for it, because when she's able to put it in play, it is one of the toughest serves to pass in all of volleyball, whether it's going to be an ace or it's just going to be a tough serve for the opposing team to put together a good attack on. She's had it going. And then on Tori's side, I mean, she's been serving well, she's been passing well, but really it comes down to her ability to terminate. And it's not as powerful as Olivia Babcock's swings, because there are very few pin hitters who are as powerful. But man, is it efficient. And in the first half, you had one of the most efficient hitting percentages of the past decade, and it's still up there. And if we're going to talk about National Player of the Year possibilities, Tori Stafford is still a leading candidate because she just ends points. She's able to find the spots on the floor or find the high hands. But she's been a big part of Pitt's point scoring on the offensive side this year.
I'm trying to pull up the hitting percentage now, as I should have had this pulled up earlier. That's my bad.
No, but something like 366 for Tori as we talk here, which is not I think in the first half of the season it was in the 400s, so it's kind of come back a bit. as Pitt's played some tougher opponents. But even still, 366 from a pin hitting position. The example is often used of comparing it to batting average. If you had a guy in Major League Baseball hitting 366, you've got an MVP level hitter, and that's what Torrey Stafford's been from the left pin this season.
I would also add that it's like if you had an MVP level hitter, but he also got like 25 at bats a game.
Right. If you could send up that hitter anytime you want and say, okay, go ahead. Yeah,
Because
go up and swing against this guy. That's
she's
what you got.
obviously not number one on the team in terms of percentage, but the people who are in front of her are people with just simply less attempts for either the position they play, like Rachel Fairbanks is above her, but the setter is not hitting that much. The middles are more selective with their shots. Bianca Garibaldi, from as what I can tell, maybe has 12 attempts and is hitting 500, so she doesn't qualify for the league lead in any of those in any of those categories. But yeah, I mean, you said it, the efficiency and the way she just finds a way to end a rally or to just get the point right there and go, it's invaluable. And I think that you're right that if she's not in the conversation for National Player of the Year, what are we doing here?
Right.
To go all the way back. Go ahead. Sorry.
And no, just to add on to that. I mean, Pitt's at a place where you have at least three. I mean, you brought up Bree Kelly, that would be a fourth, but at least three different players who you could put forward and say, this is our leading National Player of the Year candidate. And for the most part, you could glom onto that. You could say Olivia Babcock from both the serving and also the offensive play, but also the blocking as an opposite. You could say Torrey Stafford for what she's done from the left pin, or you could say Rachel Fairbanks is the setter that makes it all work. I mean, any of those people you could make a case as National Player of the Year, and that just doesn't happen. I mean, I haven't been following volleyball for more than a few years, but even in that time, a team might have one or two National Player of the Year conversation type of people, and Pitt has even more than that.
So, that's got me thinking here, right? Like, obviously, Dan Fisher has built this team, just how he wanted. He's now finally getting the top end recruits to this team. But what do you think sort of the veteran presence for Pitt is factoring in here? Now, we talked about sort of that second middle blocker is Riley Jones, and she's a true freshman. Obviously, Tori and Liv are sophomores, but they were kind of thrown into the fire more or less at the start of last year. But Valeria, Rachel Fairbanks, Bree Kelly, Kat Flood, who gets a lot of playing time, are all extremely veteran players at this point. So is there something to be said about this team having so much experience at pretty much everywhere, having deep postseason runs too? I mean, I wanted to talk on it, but you obviously had some other points to make. But in the Elite Eight and even in the Final Four, Liv serve wasn't really working. But I still think it was the right call to go with it, because if you're not going to give her the opportunity to mess up on a high stress environment, there's no opportunity to learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense,
Well, so I think what you can get from the experience that they've had is what you've seen in, say, the match against Penn State or the match against Louisville, which is that even in those environments with 11,000 people, with a full basketball arena of people, the vibe was just like, oh yeah, we know what we're doing here. This is unusual, but this is not above our standing. This is where we can really make an impact. The Louisville match was tougher. They played solid defensively. They got Pitt out of sorts in a little bit, but still came out with the victory. Penn State match, it was clinical. It was a straight sweep and very easy to do. So I think that those environments, the players that have been there for 4 years or the players that have been there for 1 year are able to kind of soak it in and play well. I would also add to that, we talked about the serving and we talked about being able to terminate from the pins, but it's also just passing. I mean, it's serve receive, and that two of their top passers are Valeria Vasquez Gomez, coming as a sixth year, and just, doing everything right in every rotation. And Emmy Klicka at libero, who has taken a major step up from previous years and is now one of the top 10 strongest passers in the country. So it's Pitt putting the pressure on when they're serving, but also not feeling the pressure when they're in serve receive. And that's really, in all aspects of the game. It's one of the rare situations where they are the number one team in the country at winning points when they're serving, and they're number one team in the country winning points when they're in serve receive. That is as complete a team as you can get. And it does start with that experience and that ability to pass from the back row and be able to set yourself up for success from there.
Oh, 100%. I mean, there is not a phase of this team's game that is lacking. We've been getting at it this entire time, but you can't have players in the top 10 and top 5 in every single category per EPA and really have a weakness in your game. Kind of like it, it doesn't add up. But you did mention something that I did want to talk about, and that was the Louisville game. Now, before I get into the specifics, I will say, obviously, Louisville is going to be the toughest opponent in the regular season. I know that we swept a bunch of people. I know that we swept a lot of top 10 teams. Louisville's different. They are Pitt's rival in volleyball. Let's be clear about that. Penn State doesn't really want to play us, so we won't count them. But that win felt really good still. So,
right.
Won't lie. But Louisville sees us twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year, and it's a trend. Every time they play in Pittsburgh, they go to 5, but Pitt wins. Now, in that game, Dan Fisher broke his usual formation. Now, you might have to help me explain the details between these two differently, but from what I know, from my sort of what I picked up on from previous guests and watching, Dan usually runs a 6-1 system with Rachel Fairbanks as the setter. Now, in that game, when it wasn't working, and you mentioned this, that Louisville got us out of sorts, he went to what I believe is a 6-2? Is that
6-2, right? Yeah.
So he went to a 6-2, taking out Rachel and putting in Nisa and Blair Bayless, which he's been going to a little bit in the game since that. So, I guess first question, why was that? Do you know why he went with that other than the 6-1 wasn't working?
Well, that's kind of it. In the post game, after the Louisville match, Dan Fisher basically alluded to wanting to change it up. It wasn't necessarily that he thought that this was a stronger formation or ability to go, but that there needed to be a change up. There needed to be some sort of spark in it. And so he goes to a 6-2. Now, for anybody listening who's sort of new to volleyball, basically the appeal of a 6-2 is that the setter, no matter who it is always in the back row. So instead of a setter rotating between the front row and back row, setter is always back row. Thus, you can get 3 attackers all in the front row. You've got the ability in that front row to go to any of those 3 up there. And that's part of the appeal of bringing Blair Bayless in, is because she, even though she's sort of behind the other 2 outside hitters in Stafford and Vasquez Gomez on the depth chart, she is strong, she is tall, she is physical, brings a lot of ability on the offensive and defensive side. She can block well, but she can also swing well. And it worked. I mean, they got the spark that they were looking for and were able to win the sets where Nisa Buzletepe came in and was able to find, the ability to have all 3 attackers. And the same thing with Rachel Fairbanks. When she was able to come back in, it was in the back rows, and she had all 3 attackers. So I don't know if it's something that will, be something that Pitt goes back to, but it gives them a different, sort of look for any teams. If you're scouting Pitt and you typically see, all 6 rotations for them with Rachel Fairbanks and setters, like, oh, here's something new. Here's the ability for Pitt to go to Blair Bayless, somebody who has, U.S. under 20 national team experience at one of the pins, and give you a different look. It's not to say that Rachel Fairbanks did anything wrong or that Olivia Babcock needs to come back out of that match. But you give them a break, you give them some time to rest up, get themselves ready, and the goal is to win the match, and they won the match out of that.
I gotta fact check myself on something real quick.
No, you're good.
Once, yeah. Because Nisa. By the way, you just were right away ready with that name, the last name. I didn't even try it. And you had that locked and loaded to go.
Hey, I get it. Turkish names, I'm not going to step into that without knowing them.
True. Okay, yeah. So she's a senior. I guess what I was thinking about this is like, obviously Rachel Fairbanks has been the setter the last 4 years. Do you think that essentially, basically, do you think that Dan? I think that Nisa was pretty late in the portal. I know that she was before Dahlia, the freshman middle blocker from Romania. But do you think that addition at the setter position as a senior, I don't think she has any eligibility left, was to sort of get that. What was that?
Yeah, this is her last year.
So yeah, this had me thinking, like, I guess Dan probably saw something in being able to get that change up with the 6-2. Do you think he went after Nisa to run the 6-2 as a change up, or just to spell Rachel? I don't know.
It's hard to say, partly because the transfer sort of came out of necessity. Haiti Tautuas, she came in last year with that big freshman class of Bayless and Babcock and Stafford as the setter of the future, and had an injury apparently in the summertime that was going to keep her out for the year. You need two setters, whether you're going to run a 6-2 or you're just going to need a second setter to practice because you're on both sides of the net. You need two setters as a top tier NCAA team. But that's not to say that Nisa doesn't bring a lot with her, because I mean, she is, especially just the simple like passing ability. When she finds her spot on the floor and is able to find a connection, she's a sharp passer. She plays the position very well, and she has what you alluded to earlier, which is big time experience. I mean, she was in the SEC with Texas A&M. She has played in the big time matches against other top SEC teams like your Florida and Kentucky. I mean, she doesn't shy away from anything. So when they had to bring her in a 6-2 in a big match, a big environment against Louisville, that's nothing to her. So she's been very effective, not just to spell Rachel Fairbanks, which has been important because looks like kind of they've needed to spell Rachel at times just for load management, coming off a minor injury herself, but effective and bringing a sort of new dimension to the offense. So it's been significant, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a certain point in the last month in November in the NCAA tournament where they need to go back to that 6-2, and she could be effective there as well.
100%. I will say, this was sort of the first offseason in a while that Dan Fisher does not just steal a player out of the Big Ten and go, okay, it's time for you to be really good now. Right. I do think with sort of, they put Bree Kelly in sort of a stasis chamber for the last year, and then they grab Nisa as well. He may be pointing the doohickey to the south. I'm not saying it's a trend, but you have to pay attention for these things, because at a certain point, he's just going to be robbing every conference, and we love that. We love our robber baron coach who has a super soldier serum somewhere under the fits and something like that.
The doohickey has provided great dividends, whether it's been the Big Ten with Emma Monks or Courtney Bazzario, or whether it was Lecator member Monet coming from Missouri. I mean, we may not have 3 straight Final Fours without the doohickey.
It's true. It's true. I really got to put that on a fucking shirt, man. I really got into the shirt again, because I know the doohickey will be a popping shirt. Enough about the doohickey. I do want to talk now about sort of schedule so far, but also attendance, because this is something that's popped up late, especially the last couple weeks. Pitt not only sold out their big game against Penn State and was near capacity for Louisville. I don't remember if it was exactly a sellout. They're also selling out the fits week in and week out. And I mean, probably by the time this comes out, I wouldn't be shocked if they're sold out for Florida State Miami coming up next week, because they've just sold out North Carolina and Duke coming up this weekend. Recording this on Thursday. And I mean, it's those are what, the 4 of the last 5 home games after Miami. They will not play at home again until the final match of the year against Georgia Tech. But you're pretty consistently in most of these games. What are you seeing as a fan on the ground in terms of fan support for this team growing even from the last couple years?
Honestly, Zach, it's blown away my own expectations for where Pitt volleyball attendance is, and it does go back to the Penn State match. My hope for that match was that they were going to go past the 8,500 or so they had for last year's Louisville match. They blew it out of the water. They sold out the place, and that's where you get to thinking like, okay, not only has this team taken a step forward, but the fan base is really locked in, bought in, taken a step forward. I I didn't foresee, the run of sellouts of the fits that they're on, that you could look at a game a week out and not be able to purchase tickets. Now, granted, that's not necessarily a great thing in its own. I know people who are coming in for this weekend, for family weekend, for football against Virginia, and thinking, oh, I want to check out Pitt volleyball. I know they're number one team, and it's, well, nope, you can't get in. We're already sold out. That's its own issue, but it falls under the category of a good problem to have when you are
Mhm.
completely selling out your home gym, when you are getting 11,000 plus in your basketball arena. Um, and it would be nice to say that, oh, this is just what Pitt is doing, and oh, aren't we so great? We're really, 7 above the rest. But it's a trend across the nation. It's across college volleyball. We're seeing attendance records being broken all over the map. I mean, Purdue has sold out their basketball arena for 2 matches, and they're not a top 5 team right now. They're hovering around, the kind of 9 to 12 range. Louisville is setting attendance records. We're seeing it around the nation. Northwestern even just set their own. There's something to the the ability for volleyball to step in as sort of the second fall sport. And beyond football, you're
Mhm.
getting folks to pay attention to volleyball in a way that they hadn't in the past. I think a lot of it is television. From the Big Ten Network broadcasting a lot of their games. Pitt's been on Big Ten Network a couple times when they've been playing USC and Oregon. Weird enough that they are Big Ten schools, but here we are. Yeah, and ESPN and ABC and Fox and even NBC and Peacock are getting more games out there. There's more of a buy-in from the TV networks and the media executives that's getting volleyball in front of more people's eyes. And I truly believe, because it worked on me, when you see the sport at its highest level in college volleyball, and you see, the excitement and just the fast pace and the fun and everything that comes around it, you sample it and you get hooked on it. And we're seeing that with Pitt right now. And once they got that number one ranking, that really opened up the doors. I mean, there was no denying how strong this Pitt program is, because you just have to say they're the number one team in the country. There's nothing else that you need to tell casual folks, Pitt graduates or anybody else who wants to come to you. You're going to see the best team in the country, and that's what they've been.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I, at least myself, I hand up. I've not been able to get back out to a game. I don't live in Pittsburgh. I've never had a weekend where it lines up where there's a volleyball match and a football match in the same weekend that I'm there. Um, but man, you're right. I remember my first game as a student, and it was a lot of fun. It was back in 2017 where they're sort of first getting on that upswing, right?
Sure.
But catching them on TV now is just is so different. It's so different. I mean, there have been times where me and Mason, obviously the other co-hosts, for any fans out there, we were at a bar one time. I was like, they don't have volleyball on the TV, and we were able to get up on his phone, and we're just hunched around this table. It was Louisville last year in the Pete, the reverse sweep for the conference title. It, like, and the craziest thing that I've seen is there's a bar in Baltimore called Pickles. It's right across the street from Cannon Yards. Great place. But they had just one of the ESPN channels on there, and they were showing reruns of the Pitt Nebraska Final Four. And I did like a triple take. I was like, "What? It's like a summer Thursday." I'm like, "This is you were so correct in your analysis that the networks are buying in, and that's what really makes me mad about ACC networks, because they always shove these on the ACC extra. Like, if you look ahead, there is only one game that's not going to be on that for the rest of the season, for the rest of the regular season. The only one being on ACC network against Louisville, which I believe is in. They're doing our thing. They're playing us in the KFC Yum exclamation point there.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah. That is one thing that I cannot stand about ACC network. And I get the thing where they had other events going on during the Pitt Louisville game, but too much of this sport is you have to go through the ESPN Plus app, which is the worst thing ever.
Mm-hmm. It really drives me crazy that ACC network and the folks involved haven't bought in the same way that other networks have. I mean, Big Ten Network, they're in hook, line, and sinker. They'll put up volleyball games on the main Big Ten Network any chance that they can. It doesn't matter which day it is. Even ESPN, ESPN2, like they've been willing to put things out there. ACC Network, and I don't know, it could be that ACC Network, and somebody can correct me on this, but I don't think they are a Nielsen tracked network. Like they are solely existing on trying to get subscribers from markets where they have ACC schools, and they don't really care about Nielsen ratings in such a way that others do for their own advertising. So they just say, oh, volleyball will be Wednesday nights and soccer will be Friday nights, and we're not going to budge from that. That's just the way it's going to be. But it's ignoring the reality that volleyball ratings are on the upswing, across the nation, across teams, and they're not able to adapt and adjust to that. To your point, you had a top 5 battle between Pitt and Louisville. You had 11,000 plus fans there. You had national volleyball analysts saying this was the best match of the season. This was amazing. You had players jawing at one another. You had a yellow card at one point issued, first to Ryla Jones of Pitt and then to the assistant coach of Louisville. You had bad blood, man. And you're keeping it on the streaming service and not on linear television. And that just, to me, shows a lack of, it's not even lack of imagination. You don't have to have imagination. It's working. You just gotta be able to push it forward.
I think it's a lack of forward thinking. And just to add to that,
yeah,
they had like former program alumni in the house, and that's sort of like, it's very common in the big sports, but that's not something you see all the time, these huge matchups in the non-revenue sports. I do think, though, that I don't know whether it's ACC's weird relationship with ESPN where they just seem to, I don't know what goes on there, because the SEC can get things in ESPN, we don't, whatever. But the SEC, not with volleyball, but actually the example I want to take from them is baseball and softball. Because SEC country is, let's be frank, it's the home of college baseball and softball. And they saw it and they went, oh, people watch this. You go to a bar in the spring, and if it's on SEC Network or one of the ESPN numbers, there's a good chance you're watching SEC baseball at that time of year. And it's a little bit different because college baseball is like that, their thing. They don't historically don't have major league teams down there, but you got to learn a lesson from that and say, because these are the best teams in the nation, people will watch them. Now, granted, the entire conference isn't good teams, but when you have teams of Pitt, Louisville, Stanford, SMU quality, you got to get them on the screen. You got to get them on the TV. Okay, sorry, we
No,
very long
you've got
diverse.
it on. You've got your finger on the pulse of something, which is that the ACC has started to challenge the Big Ten as the best volleyball conference, not top
Mhm.
to bottom, but at the top itself. I mean, you've got Pitt and Louisville and Stanford all fighting for top five, and then SMU right after. It is not altogether different from SEC baseball having your LSU's, Vanderbilt's, Mississippi State's, Florida's as prime schools in baseball. There's no reason you shouldn't embrace it in the same way that that SEC has embraced baseball.
Yeah. So you mentioned top teams.
Mm.
Now I'm going to let you cook here a little bit. I mean, not that you haven't been cooking the entire episode. I'm just going to let you go. I love these kind of episodes, but let's talk bracketology. Let's talk RPI.
Yeah.
Let's talk tournament and tournament path. Now, pop quiz. You didn't look at the RPI before you did this, right? And this was
I wouldn't lie. I wouldn't lie to you. I did indeed look at the RPI.
okay. All right. How the fuck is Louisville? We talked about this a little bit off the show. Why is Louisville number one? Why is Louisville number one? We beat them, and we're number 3.
Because the computers don't care about us. This is the BCS all over again.
This is some BCS bullshit. This is quality loss bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're not looking at the RPI standings yourself, it is Louisville number 1, Nebraska number 2, Pitt number 3. And if you've been paying attention, even one iota this season, you may notice the problem with that is that the two teams right behind Louisville, Nebraska and Pitt, both beat Louisville, Nebraska in a more resounding fashion than Pitt did. All I can say is that's RPI, baby. They rank you not just based on your record, but on your opponent's record and your opponent's record. And right now, Louisville has had the toughest strength of schedule, so they're up at number 1. Ultimately, it does not matter until you get to the very end of the season. So the fact that Pitt's not number 1 in RPI right now doesn't matter as much as if they are there at the end of the season. Here's what it comes down to. Barring any crazy upsets or turns, injuries, what have you, Pitt and Nebraska are going to be number 1 and number 2 when they rank them at the end of the season for the tournament. So that's the way it is. What it comes down to for me is making sure that you have the best path, not that you're number 1. And when the NCAA Volleyball Committee released their kind of pre-rankings in the middle of the Pitt-Stanford match, they had Nebraska number 1 and Pitt number 2. A lot of Pitt fans were up in arms. Understandable. Pitt had been number 1 for so long. My message to those folks at the time was just, just kind of bring it down a little bit. It matters what your path is. It does not matter what your ranking is. And ultimately, I think the best path for Pitt is, number 1, avoiding Nebraska until the final, being on the opposite side. Number 2, I think it's avoiding Louisville in the Final Four. I mean, it's in Louisville. It's in the KFC Yum ! Center. You don't want to be there in that sea of red if you can avoid it. So you would rather get, say, a Penn State, a Creighton, a Stanford, somebody else. Number 3, I think, is avoiding Texas. And it's a little weird right now because Texas has taken on some tough losses, even some unranked losses, and they do not look like the team that has won 2 straight national championships. But without getting too deep into the weeds, Texas just becomes a different team in December. They have been able to step up, whether it's coaching, whether it's Maddie Skinner, their reigning, sort of best player in volleyball from last year's tournament. Whatever it is, Texas finds their groove in December, and you do not want to be in their path. So that's what it's going to come down to for me. When the bracket comes out, look at where. Well, Pitt is probably going to host. I say probably, barring disaster, they'll host the first 2 rounds. They'll host the next 2 rounds through the Elite 8. And then it comes down to who they'll be playing against in the Final Four. We can break it down then. But honestly, if you are a Pitt fan and you end up seeing that their path is going against, say, Arizona State, or Stanford, and then Penn State in the Final Four, you're looking pretty good. Pitt swept two of those teams in Penn State and Stanford. They have the ability to beat any other team in the country. You just want to avoid the worst of either a sharp defensive team like a Nebraska or a Louisville, or a team like Texas that just takes the substance in December and turns into a monster.
Yeah, I think the Nebraska point is poignant. I mean, listen, there's a reason they are ranked number one. They are pitch really good. Nebraska's on that level. It's something that you got to admit as a fan of the sport. With the Louisville thing, even beyond the home crowd advantage for a potential Final Four matchup in Louisville with them in it, my thing with them is that you don't want to play a team 3 times in a season.
Yeah.
Especially because I think Louisville, the matchup at their place is the second to last matchup of the season. So they'll have some sort of fresh, they'll have fresh info on you. We saw this last year. Louisville in the Pete was one of the last matches of the season, and then it was only a couple weeks before they played them again for that Final Four berth. And then, yeah, man, Texas is the real wild card because as it stands right now, you can guarantee Texas is not going to top 4 seed. So wherever they end up, they'll still, I would assume there'll still be something in as far as a like top 4 seed in their region, but they're going to ruin someone's day in this tournament, and you hope it's not yours.
Yeah, you don't want to be in Texas' path. That's just the biggest thing we've learned from the last couple of tournaments.
Oh my god, I did not realize they were 12-6. That's
They've lost 6 games. They've lost some weird matches, but again, it really doesn't matter. I mean, it matters in the sense of where you get ranked and whether you'll host or where you'll go. But for Texas, they weren't hosting through the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight last year. I mean, they went through teams and they flew out to Stanford and beat them to be able to make the Final Four. There's something about them and that program.
I will say Texas, of all the sort of top teams, has played a very low amount of games. I wonder, like they have played, they're 13-6, so
yeah,
I missed one, but compared to SMU, who's 17-6, Arizona State's 22-2. Like Texas has played under 20 games at this point. I wonder if
that could be a mark in their favor as well. You're not swinging as much, and with Maddie Skinner and the amount of portion that they put on the arm of both Maddie Skinner and Reagan Rutherford coming in as a transfer, they might be fresher than other teams going into the tournament.
Yeah, and it's it's something you can kind of do when you have the you kind of get the benefit of the doubt when you are the reigning national champions. It is what it is. So if that was a legitimate strategy, which I think is actually pretty smart, kudos to them on doing it because you want to win more of your games if you're doing that. But I digress.
And it might also be an RPI play. You play fewer teams, but you play tougher teams. I think they're number 3 in strength of schedule right now because they just played very tough out of conference. And now that they've moved from the Big 12 to the SEC, I mean, you've got not the strongest opponents, but you've got enough good quality opponents in Kansas and Texas A&M and Florida and Missouri that the RPI will look. They'll smile upon any top 25 or top 50 opponents that you schedule. So that might work in their favor as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you talk about their out of conference with Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Stanford. That is one of the stronger we'll see out of any team this year. Now, I've got one more thing for you to go out on, and I am talking about a certain comments that the new athletic director made about this program. Now, I've not done my homework on the guy. All I know is that he is the money guy.
Yeah.
But I've seen what you've written about it, and I'd like to give you sort of a soapbox here as we go out. Send a message to the fan base here on what new Pitt athletic director Alan Green said in his opening statement. I believe there was opening statements, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
His
Well,
introductory-
this comment did come in the questions after, so I will at least give the new AD Alan Green the benefit of the doubt. It was not something that he came out with written down. But Alan Green in the sort of post-event scrum was asked about the Olympic sports, the non-revenue sports, and specifically was cited in the question volleyball and the success that they've had. And I believe the phrasing of the question was essentially like, how does that success help you raise money? And he twice, I think, cited the line was, well, it certainly makes people feel good. And then went on to talk about how football and basketball are the money makers. Now, I'll grant you, in the broad strokes, he's not wrong. Football can get 60,000 people into a stadium. Basketball can do that 12,000 on a regular basis, and they make the money on TV. Ultimately, they are, for all intents and purposes, the money makers. And they are right now. I mean, Pitt volleyball is not a moneymaker. It is not a revenue positive sport. Grant you all that. For me, though, the problem that I had was it showed a total lack of imagination, and it totally cut against the main thrust of Alan Green's comments in his opening statement, which was to see the vision and to, believe in what was possible, and sort of all these sort of forward thinking comments from him. And when it came to the volleyball program and the success that they had, there was not that. There was not hail to possible. There was no thought of like, oh, we can build on what has been created, and we can look toward a school like Nebraska that has turned its volleyball program into a revenue positive program, or to a Texas or a Louisville, which has turned their volleyball programs into sort of flagship, sort of maybe not revenue positive, but close to revenue neutral, and certainly championship worthy kind of places. It just struck the wrong chord. I will be happy to give him the benefit of the doubt that he is coming into a new job. He can see over these course of the months, and he said he's going to be on a listening tour for his first few months, that he is not going to make a lot of big decisions or big changes in the first few months. I think that's a great way to approach a new job. But to sort of cut the question off at the pass when somebody brings up the volleyball program and the success that they have, and to simply think of Olympic sports as they make people feel good, instead of seeing the opportunities that exist. Zach, as you and I have talked about through this almost hour that we've been talking, the possibilities exist for TV coverage, for sponsorships to come in. There's sponsors on Nebraska's TerraFlex floor right now. There are opportunities where companies and NIL deals where they want to go into women's sports because they see the growth possibilities that exist. People can read the whole post that I have on my Substack, jamesantelli.substack.com. But two things that I'll point out is that Pitt has already had, two matches in volleyball where they have drawn better than the men's basketball team did all of last year. They, from their social media account on Instagram and the players' social media accounts on Instagram, have more followers than the men's basketball team and the men's basketball players. This is not asking for a charity case. This is asking you to see what already exists and know that you have a growth stock in your portfolio that if you invest in, you can draw from in the future. So that's my soapbox on Alan Green and the possibilities that exist in Pitt volleyball. And look, they're doing a lot right now. They're going to be moving into a brand spanking new Victory Heights venue It's looking like it won't be next season. It'll be 2026. But I sincerely hope, and if Alan Green wants to hear my own, pitch to him, he can bring me at any time. I'm happy to present it to him. But there is that ability to take volleyball from what it's been as a non-revenue sport and take it to something that can be a moneymaker for the athletic department.
You brought up Victory Heights, and I did want to bring that up because just as a pragmatist, right?
Sure.
In terms of supporting this program, brother, you have to. You're building the building. You can't undo the foundations. You can't undo any of this shit. Yeah, this is a program on the rise, and not only does it make people happy, it excites people. It genuinely does. Like, if you catch any of these road games on the ACC networks, or if it's on ESPN Plus, for most programs, this is not the level of excitement you have. That is the case in, I would say, most programs across the country, if it's not, Texas, Wisconsin, Nebraska, et cetera, et cetera. And like you said, Texas, Wisconsin, it's a little different for the more storied programs. They sort of have a built-in like recognition at the school. But Dan Fisher has built this from the ground up, and the level of excitement and the level of like true fandom of people following this team, it's not something you have to do anything to tap into. You can just sort of take what's there and really take this thing to new heights. But you said it more eloquently than me. I'm just repeating it.
No, I'll just add on to that one other point, is that there are going to be people, graduating from Pitt this spring that, fingers crossed, Pitt makes the Final Four again this December. They'll be graduating having only ever known a volleyball team that makes the Final Four in their 4 years at Pitt. Yeah. That is the kind of thing that can sustain alumni donations, and if they're sticking around in the Pittsburgh area, season tickets and support for both Panther Club and for NIL and for revenue sharing, whatever form it takes in the future. And you need all of the above. I mean, you're looking at a future in college athletics where, football and men's basketball are great, and they're your top two. As the metaphor I put it, they're your sort of ETFs. They're what you put most of your retirement fund in. But you got to be looking elsewhere in your portfolio, man. You got to be making money from all of the above. You got to find whatever you can. So don't discount what's been laid out to you. Especially, you're coming in as an AD. You've got a #1 volleyball program. You got a top 5 men's soccer program. Do not look a gift horse in the mouth. You can do something with this if you have the creativity and the forward thinking to make something out of it.
Well put. I was just laughing myself because going off the stock metaphor, I was trying to figure out what sport crypto was, and I'm just gonna say it's esports off the dome.
Yeah,
I don't want to.
Yeah, that's about it.
I don't want to insult anybody, but listen, man, this has been an awesome episode. I'm gonna have you back on. We might have to do some sort of like pit volleyball fucking round table with like me, you, Dom, and I don't know, pick your fourth person. That would be a lot of fun. If you like this episode, please follow James on Twitter at James Santelli. Please follow Substack. I'll link all that shit in the show notes because it's all great. If you like the show, follow us on Twitter too at SimplifiedPod. And we'll see you next week.
Hail to Pitt.